Hello everyone. What you know is that this is Space Engineers. What you don't know is that I'm playing on a heavily modded server. I've got probably 200 hours in this server now, and I've been mostly solo the entire time. For today's issue, what we're working to resolve is that we are currently completely bottlenecked by our refineries. This server is a tech server in that we have different tech refineries. It's pretty old news for Space Engineers. But what is different about this one is the tech is incredibly expensive and it is craftable. We're talking 25,000 iron ingots and 20,000 silicon ingots and roughly 5,000 cobalt ingots, if I can remember right off the top of my head. Anyways, this is the Chaotic Minds gaming server. I got in on this pretty early. I'm currently recovering from a surgery, so I have a lot of time to put into this, and I've really enjoyed this server. It's given me a new spark here, 3,500 hours into Space Engineers. A little bit about what we got going on today. I built this stage here for assembling this vehicle. We're building a grinder because at this point, the only way for me to increase production of ingots, such as iron ingots, cobalt ingots, silicon ingots, is for me to go find them out in the world in the form of fully assembled components and then having them scrapped through the assembler, which is already sitting mostly idle right now. My assemblers stay a little bit busy when they're crafting ammunition, but other than that, they're sitting there. Currently the tech system, the way it works is I take the common tech and I build a common tech assembler. Then through the common tech assembler, I can, sorry, I build a common tech assembler by building the common tech in the regular assembler. Then in the common tech assembler, I could build the enhanced tech. And I'm just about to that point, but what would take 25,000 ingots of iron to make a common tech, I now need 15 common tech to make one of the enhanced tech. So it's getting pretty expensive, especially if you consider that I need 40 tech in order to get the enhanced drills. I've already got 6 of the common drills. I'm loving it. Uh, Most people might hear these numbers and think, wow, that is incredibly expensive. That's too expensive. Why would you be doing this to yourself? But to be honest, uh, it's just the kind of thing I needed out of Space Engineers lately. It gives me a reason to go, and the more time I put into it, the more progression I have compared to my peers, and I get a lot farther in the time that I actually dedicate versus just messing around building stuff that doesn't actually have any purpose. But I'm going to let this video go for a little while and I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause, talk about a couple of the design choices that I made. Right here at the beginning, I chose this red instead of using that pale blue, that sky blue that I'm using for everything else. I don't paint different colors very often, but I thought that red would contrast really well against the background and give you, the viewer, something better to look at. So here you can see the vehicle is already starting to take shape. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my build and repair system here. I've had some issues with it just not wanting to communicate with my build and repair inventory management script. I use a script on a programmable block that every time that the build and repair identifies that it's missing a item, it will send that item to the queue in the assembler queue. And I couldn't during this time I'm trying to identify if it's the assemblers that aren't working properly or if the script is not working properly or the build and repair that's not working properly. But I want to keep this in one long cut, so I'm just going to fast forward until I get back on screen. So here I've got the basic shape. Obviously grinders in front, cargo in back. And I haven't quite made more of a decision other than I'm looking at where the cockpit's going to go. I did get on my second account and move the camera there for a second to make the vehicle a little bit more centralized. I'll also be rotating the vehicle a little bit as we go to try to give the camera a better view. I really was trying to be conscious of this time lapse as I was going. Here's when I retreated off screen, and with my frustration over the build and repair system not actually automatically queuing the things it needed in the assembler, I began just throwing a large queue in the various assemblers. I'm allowed 8 of them. I've got 8 assemblers, so it went pretty fast. I threw interior plates in some, large pipes in another. I ended up bottlenecked on components, basic components there for the longest time. So you'll see me still getting this going, but struggling just for a short time, and then smooth out as the cues finally catch up. And here's the first time that asteroids make an appearance in this video. My defense turrets are letting loose, some tracers flying across the screen on the top right hand corner there. The combination of the deflector shields and my defense turrets make their presence virtually non-existent. I don't worry about any impacts at all, especially with as much energy as I have on this grid and deflection and the deflector shield. The worst thing it could do is strike me directly, and in Space Engineers, life is cheap. So here you can see the thruster layout that I ended up deciding on. I've got the O2H2 generator on one side of my vehicle and the oxygen tank on the other. Vertical thrusters are being mounted along the top and bottom of those rear thruster packs, while the horizontal thrusters are being put directly behind the cockpit. The last time I built one of these, I tried to integrate the thrusters into the actual drill head setup, but I feel like this chassis works a little bit better for me. And at this point, I have all the internals placed, and I could fly the vehicle away if I really needed to in a pinch. I have my horizontal thrusters, vertical thrusters, forward and back. I've got my grinding heads, my cockpit, my gyroscopes, O2H2 generator, my oxygen generator, and a collection of the 3 large hydrogen tanks in the back. This is primarily a hydrogen vehicle, but I'm going to back it up with ion just in case I run out of hydrogen. I feel like any good design does have a little bit of ion just to make sure that you can at least brake in the scenario of running out of hydrogen. Here, I'm starting to work on the front of the vehicle. I'm putting some lights down. It's a little bit of a habit that I developed with my drill head formats, so I figured that grinders are pretty close to drills. Why not do something of the same? An observation now, in hindsight, looking back at the ship, usually I put more lights along the body and towards the docking port on the back, but I guess while I was putting this together, it felt unnecessary. And then for the purpose of recording, I decided to go with the default blue to give more contrast against the red. So red to contrast against my company colors. Well, Giant Co is the name of my faction, and it's RPing as essentially a giant corporation. So, and I'm using the pastel. I'm using the pastel colors because that kind of seems like something they would do. I don't want it to be hard for the viewer to see it, so went with red, and then blue gives you a better idea of what I'm working on directly. To the keen observer, you might notice that I've really only finished this pattern on the thruster pad closest to us. At this point, I was actually starting to feel fatigued. This came out to be a pretty long recording. At this point, we're an hour and 37 minutes into the recording. At this point, I noticed that the slanted sheet metal blocks that I had used on the bottom were not actually seaming up properly with the lay flat versions. So if you do that 35, what is it? It's either a 30 or 35-degree block, and you do not rotate it properly, and if you have it next to a flat block, it won't actually be a solid, or it won't be a seamless transition from one into the other. And in my haste earlier with the lower portion, I had messed that up. So here I am actually just grinding those out. And at some point, I realized that I do not believe the lower blocks are even attached anymore. The lower flats are even attached anymore. And I just leave them. I will rotate the vehicle soon, and it will chuck those off to the side, and that'll do exactly what I need. Like I said, I'm starting to be pretty fatigued by the lack of the symmetry tool and the amount of detail that I'm trying to put into this vehicle. This is my first time lapse, and I wanted it to be a vehicle that was actually appealing when it was all done and over with. So I'm sort of pulling out all of the stops and using every little trick that I've discovered over the last couple of years. Most of what you see right here is actually recent development in my building skills. I like to use these sheet metal blocks a lot, especially in space where I can't get my blocks to butt up perfectly. With the thought process of I cannot cover this entire vehicle the way I want to because some of these corners extend out too far. And it's just take something that I can't help and work it into my design so that way it looks like I did the thing I can't help on purpose. Here, I'll give you the satisfaction of slowing down the vehicle so that way you can see those lower plates I was talking about fly off in all directions. Just rotating, and there they go. And here at this point, I finished up the flanks of the vehicle, well, at least to a certain extent, to where I felt like I wanted to work on the bottom of it. And I decided that, well, the vehicle is already functional. It is only running off its batteries right now. I did just grab a little bit of uranium to throw it into the reactor. Yeah, so I'm just going to roll it over and get a better shot of the undercarriage so that way we could get a better recording on this. And the vehicle was a little bit sluggish when I went to do the roll, just pressing Q to get it on its side so that way we could get this camera angle. So I decided to cut some compartments into where I could and hide these gyroscopes in. Here we're getting down to the end of it. I'm just kind of being finicky about the final details. There will be a couple more additions I make. For example, the hood here. I try to break up color lines. Even though I'm going to eventually just paint this all my faction's color, I still like for at any point to have the body lines broken up. So sort of the philosophy I run with, I try not to leave three blocks next to each other of the same pattern, and you'll see me continue to break this up all the way to the very end of the. And here's where I changed over to my pastel blue. This is the color that we would have been squinting at the entire time if I wasn't using that blue and red. I'm gonna give it a quick spin here to give everybody a view of it. You'll see the the observation I'm making right here is that the thruster packs have a lot more detail in it than the drills. The drills are kind of cubey. They've got big flat surfaces and sharp corners, so I will be working on rounding that out, or at least breaking up the monotony of that pattern. And here we are. At this moment, I'm not actually connected to the station. I'm programming the hotbar on the vehicle. I'm making sure that I can just press a button and start filling the tanks. After connecting, obviously, I'm getting a little bit of gas in my hydrogen tanks, so all the lights come, all of the thrusters come to life. And I sit here for just a moment to fill my hydrogen tanks, and then I'll get off the connector and do a quick spin. Here I'm coming up to the camera, I'm thinking about doing an emote, but then I realized that my jumpsuit actually changed color. Usually I'm running the pajama outfit with rainbow boots, helmets, and gloves because that's the closest thing I have to the pajama outfit. I really like this what we call it's called a sticker bomb that's on the pajama, and I haven't had the opportunity to collect the rest of it yet. As I'm flying back to the vehicle, I realize that I really need to do something about these hard corners and just fairly ugly grinder packs. So I'm going to make one last addition to it before it's over. And there it is. I did make one last adjustment to those grinding boxes, trying to break up the pattern a little bit, try to make them look like they're less of a painted cardboard box, give them some structural reinforcement. You can see through them a little bit, and I think that's good enough for now. So the grinding ship's maiden voyage was a mission to grind down a space pirate mining depot or mining outpost. I took the weapons off it with the Roland, and then the grinder ship was supported by the Roland's build and repair. It's a single build and repair, so you'll see things fall off the station every so often. We had a quick restart there on the server. We're back at it. I had to change camera angles here. The first camera angle was actually through the turrets of the Roland, but I decided that I didn't like that camera angle and I wanted to try something more like this. You can tell that these are the basic grinders. I have to get right up on the facility before it grinds, so it's vanilla settings. This entire ship, I didn't even realize it is vanilla. That was not intentional, but it works out just fine. It is DLC, of course, with the nice ion thrusters and the industrial hydrogen thrusters, but that's okay. I would like to see how well this performs with the better grinders. Of course, having to do every other to preserve CPU. The servers don't want us to have entire walls of grinders going after vehicles, so I had to do every other grinder method, and that causes hang-ups. Sometimes you'll be approaching your target and you'll catch on the side of your grinder. Here, I completely destabilized the station, so I synced my character to the grinding ship to act like a third-person camera, and I wanted to experiment with this follow cam. I was really tempted to just grind down this cargo container and then call it a day, give a status report on it, and end this video out. But this was the experimental phase here. Pretty nice chase after, get the rest of this ground down. But the major takeaway here is that this was a success. It would have taken me probably 2 hours to grind this all the way down with the build and repair. The build and repair Just one build and repair that isn't buffed really takes its time with steel plates, which I'm not complaining. It keeps the server stable. At this point, I'm finishing up. I'm going to go make sure that it parks inside the parking garage of the Roland. And I'm watching two monitors here. I'm watching the monitor on my right and trying to fly at the same time, and ended up hitting on the roof of the Roland's garage. It fit pretty nicely. The Roland is made out of XL blocks, and the station's completely gone. Here, I pull it out and I look in the vehicle's inventory. It's got roughly 7,500 steel plates, but I'm really interested in the silica. But as I said, it was a success. Alrighty, guys, if you like this ship, I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Steam Workshop, so that way you could download the blueprint, use it there. If you end up repainting it something nice, please comment back to me on there. I'd like to see what paint jobs you guys put on there. I might be good with block placement, but I hate working on paint jobs. Thank you.